It feels like every week there's a new drama in the VTuber community where somebody is being super competitive, or they are backstabbing their friends, or they are just acting toxic. Now, I'm not interested in rehashing the drama. If you're here for that, this isn't the video for you. But for anyone new here, hi, I'm Psydere. I am a research psychologist. I specialize in social psychology. So that means understanding how people think and behave in relation to other people. I watch all of the dramas that happen around this kind of stuff, and to me, it's just standard human behavior. If you've ever wondered why people behave like that, why are people so cutthroat and competitive and vicious, I'm about to drop some psychology truth bombs. And I'm not gonna lie to you, I think that VTubing as an industry is set up in a way which makes this stuff more likely to happen. Allow me to explain. So one of the core theories in social psychology is called social comparison theory. This was proposed by someone called Festinger back in the 1950s, and it still holds true to this day. It basically argues that people are motivated to improve their performance at the things that they care about. And in order to understand how they are performing, they need to compare themselves to other people. So you can either compare yourself up to people who are better than you, or you can compare yourself down to people who you think are worse than you. And that comparison is thought to drive competitive behavior. Now, you may be thinking, what's that got to do with VTubing? Live streaming in general is very metrics orientated. You will see websites like, for example, Twitch Tracker or the VTuber stats leaderboards that will explicitly compare people by rank. And we know for a fact that this ranking system makes people more competitive. And when people are more competitive, they're more likely to act in ways that aren't always conducive to a collaborative and supportive environment, because it drives their urge to win. They want to win. They want to be at the top of the ranking. Now, I know as viewers, a lot of people find these rankings interesting and they find them exciting even. They want to push their Oshi to be at the top of the leaderboard. If you're just a viewer, take a moment to just step back and think about what it would be like to be that person on that leaderboard. As you progress up through the leaderboards, people compare themselves more directly to people that are similar in ranking to them. So let's say, for example, I was in the top 0.01% of all streamers on Twitch, okay? I might only look at the people who are in my immediate network because they're the only people that make sense to compare to. There is now so much downwards comparison that it basically renders downwards comparison irrelevant unless it's to somebody in my immediate proximity on the leaderboard. And unfortunately, streaming is very, very tight-knit. People generally know other people of the same size, which means that, yeah, all of the top VTubers probably all know each other. Which brings me to another thing that's really, really important in terms of competition. You're more likely to be competitive when your living depends on it, but also when the thing that you're doing is close to your identity, when it is a central part of how you define yourself. If I define myself as a VTuber over and above being a scientist, it might make me more competitive. And there is, of course, a personality component to this. Some people are naturally just more competitive than other people, but that's quite difficult to assess. You need to have validated measures to be able to really identify whether somebody is inclined to that behavior or not. And the other thing that I've mentioned there that's quite important is closeness, whether you're friends with somebody. If you're close to somebody, if you know them personally, you're much more likely to compare yourself to them than some random. If I just go onto a random VTuber's YouTube channel, I probably won't compare myself to them because, like, why? What do I gain from it? I don't know anything about them. I just don't have enough information to be able to make an adequate assessment. However, I'm in a VTuber group called VTheorem. We're a bunch of science communication VTubers. I'm much more likely to compare myself to them because I know them well. I know what they're doing. I know their content well. So I just have more contextual information to be able to make that kind of assessment. So far we've talked about 3 key things that are important in terms of social comparison. How similar the person you're comparing to is, how relevant the thing you're comparing on is to your identity, and how close you are to the person you're comparing to. But those are kind of all individual level stuff, right? That's all kind of linked to you and your personal situation. Now, I said earlier that I think the VTubing industry is set up in a way that incentivizes competitive behavior, and that's because there is a whole bunch of situational factors that also impact how competitive we are. So one example would be the rankings that I've already mentioned. If we have this system that normalizes comparing people's metrics, then people look more closely at the metrics and they want their metrics to be better. But it kind of goes deeper than that, right? Because those metrics that people tend to look at, the average viewers, the number of subscribers, stuff like that, it's all tied to actual gain. There is an incentive to increasing your viewer count. There is an incentive to getting more paid subscribers on Twitch or more members on YouTube. And the obvious incentive is money. If you're doing this as a job, then your metrics are directly tied to how much you get paid. On top of that, streaming can very easily be considered what's called a zero-sum game. So this is the idea that one person's gain is another person's loss. And the reason I say that is because if somebody is watching your friend's stream, that means they're not watching yours. Even if they lurk in the background, They're not actively engaging if they're watching someone else's stream. They're not spending money on bits or subs or memberships or super chats. They are focusing their attention on somebody else, and therefore their wallet is more directly tied to somebody else. And that is just a recipe for competition. But that's just streaming in general, right? What about VTubing? The success of VTubers is often measured by things like how fancy and pretty your model is, or how much merch you can sell, how nice your merch is, can you commission certain artists? All of these things require money, which requires more viewers, unless you're, somebody like me who has a job. If you don't have a job, if you want VTubing to be your career, rather than something that you choose to put money into, you need those viewers to help fund all of the things that are incentivized in VTubing. Basically, I'm saying it's a vicious cycle. You need money in order to get the positive feedback from having things like fancy models and fancy art and stuff like that. In order to do that, you need more viewers, because more viewers equals more money. But in order to do that, your viewers need to be not watching your friends. I think the aspect of like social pressure to have a fancy model and to have fancy art and overlays and stuff like that is a lot stronger in the VTuber community than it is in like the facecam streaming community. This is probably worse for people at the top of VTubing. All of those people that who have big numbers, who have loads and loads of subscribers, they probably feel this stronger than anybody, because VTubing has a very clear standard. If you have the highest number of views, the highest number of subscribers or super chats, you are number one. And the closer that you get to that standard, the more likely you are to compare yourself to it. Now, I should say that this is generally within categories. And VTubing is kind of unique in a way because we have subcategories even within VTubing. So like, for example, a corporate VTuber is probably not going to compare themselves to an indie VTuber and vice versa. But if you are in, for example, a network of high profile, successful, well-paid, highly watched independent streamers, and you are achieving similar levels of success, then there is a very strong chance you're going to compare yourself to them. And with that increased level of comparison comes that higher level of competition, because the closer you are to number one, the more viciously you fight for it. Now you may be thinking, okay, Psydere, all of this is all well and good, you've got your psychology, this is making sense, but none of this explains why VTubing is so vicious and cutthroat, why people backstab each other so much, why people will hurt their friends. And my answer to that is that VTubing is not unique. This happens in other settings too. So I've been in academia for like 5 years now, and I can tell you all of this happens there too. You might think that people with PhDs and, tenured positions at universities and stuff like that would be sensible and not do this, but you are completely wrong. VTubing and academia, I think, are actually very similar. The amount of cutthroat behavior that I have seen in academia is genuinely astounding. You will have people that have collaborated with each other for years, they're friends, they go to barbecues at each other's houses, and then they will have a disagreement over a paper where like one of them wants to be an author and the other one won't let them be an author, and then it will just break down the whole relationship and it will start a feud between two labs that lasts for 20 years. People weaponize grants and job contracts and authorship on publications. Like, this is a thing in academia too. And I think the reason for that is that we have a similar style incentive structure. We also kind of have a ranking. The judge of how good you are as a researcher is your citation number and your H index. So this is basically a count of how many other papers have referenced your paper. And it's kind of a proxy for like how much impact your work has had on the world. And overwhelmingly, the scientists who have more citations and therefore a higher H index are the ones that are treated better. They are more likely to get money to do their research, they are more likely to get promotions, they are more likely to find PhD students. On top of that, the promotion system is also kind of like a hierarchy. You go from PhD student, and then you are a postdoctoral researcher, and then you fight for a tenure position. Once you've got it, you're then a professor, but there's also ranks of professor until you get to the top rank of professor, which in some countries literally requires the sign off of like the president or the monarch. So it's a pretty big deal. You are considered the actual expert in your field. And when people feel themselves getting close to that point, sometimes they will start undermining their friends or their colleagues. Sometimes they will start overworking their students or trying to get their students to do free work even. I guess what I'm trying to say is that this narrative that VTubing is uniquely toxic and people are backstabby and you can't trust anybody who's a VTuber, it's just not true. You see this in so many other places too. And I think it's really important for us to stay grounded as a community and to understand why people do these kinds of things. It is a natural part of human psychology. Does that mean it's okay? No. it doesn't mean it's okay. The fact that it's a natural thing has no relevance to whether it should happen or not. But that doesn't change the fact that as long as there are people involved, it will probably happen. I don't really know what was the point of this video. I guess I just wanted to spread some awareness of psychology and to put things into perspective a little bit. Things are not as bad as they seem to be. And personally, I've found such a good community through VTubing. I've got incredible friends. I've got an incredible community of viewers. And I don't think that's me being lucky. I think that that's something that's been built because I've surrounded myself with people who are similar to me, in the sense that VTubing is for fun. They don't view it as central to their career. It's just a fun hobby. That last part is just my personal opinion. I don't have any research to back it. It's just how I feel. If you've enjoyed this psychology yapping and you don't follow me on Twitch, you totally should. It's twitch.tv/Psydere. Depending on when you watch this, I may be on a small hiatus because I'm about to sit my actual PhD defense. That's right. I'm going to be a real scientist. And if you're already subscribed to me on YouTube, sorry that I've been neglecting you. I have been busy with the PhD. I have a year of content backlog. I'm so sorry. There will be videos eventually. Anyway, thanks for listening. Bye.